Right. Let's get straight into it. Picture this. You're sitting in a high-stakes boardroom meeting. The company is getting ready to make these massive, multi-million-dollar investments into AI. Everyone around the table is nodding, the executive team is super enthusiastic, and honestly, the deployment timelines look incredible. But underneath all that confidence, there is a massive, completely misunderstood structural risk. In this explainer, we're going to dissect the single most critical AI question that boards absolutely must be asking right now. And, more importantly, why the answer they're usually getting isn't just wrong, it's actually dangerous for the business.
This really hits the nail on the head. There is exactly one wrong answer, being delivered with total confidence in boardrooms right now. We loaded it with our data. It is the ultimate boardroom reassurance, right? It sounds technical, it feels rigorous, and it makes everyone in the room feel like this AI is finally ours. But we're going to break down exactly why this is nothing but an illusion of readiness. Accepting this answer is literally exposing your organization to hidden liabilities, wasted money, and a huge competitive disadvantage.
Think of this explainer as your executive diagnostic briefing. Here's our agenda. 1. The critical boardroom question. 2. Data loading isn't training. 3. Fluency versus causal understanding. 4. Defining process excellence. And 5. The ultimate diagnostic test.
So, kicking things off with Section 1, the critical boardroom question. Basically, what are we missing here?
Look, boards are definitely doing their jobs. They're asking completely reasonable questions about strategy and risk. But they are entirely missing one fundamental foundational question. How did we train the AI model about our business? And I want to emphasize the word how. This isn't about which fancy foundational model you bought or how many parameters it has. It's all about the actual methodology used to translate the day-to-day reality of your unique business operations into something an AI system can actually understand.
What's wild is that these are the questions actually dominating board minutes right now. Do we have an AI policy? What's our budget and ROI? Are we exposed to regulatory risk? Which vendors are we using? Who's accountable? Now, don't get me wrong, these governance-adjacent questions absolutely matter. But here's the stark reality. A company can easily answer every single one of these perfectly, approve a massive budget, and name an executive in charge without the AI system having even a shred of real understanding about how the business actually operates. That gap, it's completely invisible in a standard board deck.
Moving right along to Section 2, data loading isn't training, the illusion of readiness.
Here is the absolute crucial point. When a management team confidently tells you an AI model was trained on our business, what usually happened is just one of three things. Maybe they indexed a bunch of PDFs, wikis, and old standard operating procedures into a retrieval system, RAG, or they piped in structured data tables from their ERP or CRM, or maybe they just fine-tuned it on customer service transcripts so it mimics the company's tone. Doing these things only gives the model data structure and vocabulary. It does absolutely zero to teach the actual logic underneath those words.
Which brings us to Section 3, fluency versus causal understanding, sounding smart versus actually knowing how it works. The gap between fluency and causal knowledge is honestly night and day. Fluency is exactly what you get from data loading. It's basically like forcing a brand new hire to read a 5-year-old employee handbook and then expecting them to run the entire department. Sure, the model can retrieve what documents say and mimic the vocabulary flawlessly, but causal knowledge? That's true understanding. A system with causal knowledge knows exactly what inputs drive outputs. It knows process boundaries, and it actually learns from real feedback loops, not just historical assumptions. This exact disconnect is why we see so many highly anticipated AI pilots just quietly fail after a really impressive initial demo. The system sounds incredibly confident, right? But then it starts recommending actions that completely ignore business reality. And why is that? Because vocabulary alone does not carry causal structural knowledge. The AI might be able to recite your 30-day return policy perfectly, but it doesn't know why it exists, what actually breaks if you violate it, or who even has the authority to override it. Let's pivot to the solution in Section 4, defining process excellence and the IPE framework. The foundational layer to solving this is a scientific causal data architecture called KIV-KPV-KOV. That stands for Key Input Variables, Key Process Variables, and Key Output Variables. To genuinely train an AI, you absolutely have to map out the causal chain of your operations. You have to explicitly teach the AI what inputs functionally drive your specific business outcomes. And that is completely different from just letting a model guess based on historical correlations in your data. To actually put that causal architecture to work, we use Integrated Process Excellence, or IPE.
Now, this isn't some brand new, untested generative AI theory. It's a rigorous 6-step framework rooted all the way back in Roger Slater's 1996 work for defining, controlling, and improving processes. In today's AI landscape, IPE is literally the missing link. It's that essential bridge between your raw business data and a model that can genuinely claim to understand your operations. So what does applying this actually look like in the real world? Well, there are 4 explicit steps you have to externalize before you can ever tell a board your AI is trained. 1, you define the purpose, the specific owner, and the exact boundary of the process. 2, you identify those causal variables we just talked about. 3, you document the standard methods and the control limits, like where is the line between normal variation and an actual problem. And 4, establish a formal feedback loop. Guess what? Data loading skips every single one of these steps.
And that brings us to a very hard truth regarding risk and regulation. If you look at emerging frameworks like the EU AI Act or NIST, they increasingly expect you to prove how an AI's outputs relate to a governed process. Data governance alone is not going to protect you here. If you just name an accountable executive, but you haven't actually done the process definition work, that executive is legally and functionally accountable for a totally undocumented black box. Now, I know mapping all this out sounds incredibly daunting, but it really doesn't have to be. There are currently 81 pre-built sector-specific IPE packs available right now from IPE Services. These cover major operational domains across healthcare, manufacturing, pharma, you name it. They basically give you a starting library of process definitions. So instead of staring at a blank page and taking years to do this, your organization can accelerate this critical readiness work in a matter of weeks.
All right, final stretch. Section 5, the ultimate diagnostic test. Taking this directly to the board.
If you want to instantly separate genuine process training from just glorified data loading in your next internal review or vendor pitch, you need to ask these 3 follow-up questions. First, show me the process definition the model was trained against. If they just point to a database, they just fed it data. Second, who owns the process the AI touches, and did they sign off on it? Because data loading doesn't have a sign-off step. Process training absolutely does. And third, when the underlying process changes, how does the AI actually find out?
That third question is absolutely critical, because here is the harsh reality. Loaded data goes stale silently. If you're relying entirely on loaded data, your AI's understanding is going to drift without you even knowing it. Measuring your AI's ROI against this wrong baseline is a massive trap. Sure, you're going to see some early productivity bumps in searching or drafting emails, but it will inevitably lead to completely hidden, costly errors the second that AI is asked to make a complex, process-level judgment that it was never structurally taught how to make. So, I want to leave you with this to really challenge your organization's AI foundation. Is your AI actually trained on your business processes, or did you just hand it a massive folder of documents and cross your fingers? The fix here isn't waiting around for a smarter model. The remedy is doing the process definition work right now. Converting all that undocumented tribal knowledge into a governed AI foundation is exactly what John Couchett and the framework at IPE Services are built to do. It's time to ensure that when your board asks how the AI was trained, you finally have an answer that is real, governed, and truly ready for whatever comes next.